So, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this workshop. I'm the General Director at the Minister of Education, and I'm with you this morning as animator of this workshop, which is about a vision around digital transformation in education. So this transformation is obvious, obviously, and it's almost inevitable, as we've seen in the last year and months. So this transformation will be lived differently depending on the situation. And I have a science fiction author here that talked about these issues, the evolution and the technological transformation. Everything that's on Earth when you're born is normal and usual, mundane. But everything that's invented as you grow up, that's new, revolutionary, and passionate. And everything that's developed after you're 35 is too much. So there's a bit of a different situation here. And it can be hard to navigate all these changes. So how can we be more at ease with all of these changes? How can we master these tools? And that's the goal of the different workshops of the day. But how can we also create links between all of this and how to make sense of it all, these changes? So that's a bit of the objective of this workshop. So now I have two guests here with me here, which will help us do that on how to clarify this vision at the governmental level first, and then in the education field in particular. So we will have Mr. Pierre Rodrigue here, which will talk, which is one of the main leader in government in these issues. And then we will welcome Mr. Stéphane Lepoux, which is also working at the Minister of Education in Quebec. So Mr. Rodrigue will talk about the governmental point of view, and Mr. Lepoux will talk about the more specific context of education. So there will be a Q&A period at the end of the presentations. So if you have any questions, please write them in the Q&A section, and the moderators will transmit the questions at the end. So without further ado, I will leave the floor to Mr. Rodrigue. Thank you, Frédéric. I will begin by thanking Stéphane, which gives me a few minutes to talk to you, and I want to congratulate the organizers of such a day. It's quite the achievement, and it's very essential, and we see it in the workshops, and there's a lot of interest on digital transformation. So I will move to the next slide. So the message here that I want to give you, the message from these leaders is this. So this digital transformation is of little interest if after you've put it after you've put all this money, effort, planning, if the citizen that we serve, the business that we serve, the groups that we serve, if they don't see a difference, then it's useless. So we need to keep in mind that digital transformation is not a technological project per se. They're service projects to our different clienteles to be able to improve the service that we offer them. And obviously, this is not always the case. So you can see on screen our vision, our high-level vision. We want to put into place a public, digital, and resilient platform, because we want to improve the performance of the state, because we're not quite at our best yet. We need resilient platforms. I think we've seen it during the pandemic. Obviously, it's important. We also want cyber protection because, as you know, there's a lot of dangers as well. Cyber attacks are a bit of a pandemic as well. And we need these projects to focus on co-creation and how to generate value, because it's impossible to do all of this without everybody's participation and without collaboration and teamwork. So it's extremely important to focus on the team aspect. How can we work with the clients that we serve? So for education in particular, but it's true in health, it's true at the SAC level. So we cannot impose or invent things for our clients without working in collaboration with them to make sure that it really answers their needs. Of course, we need to create value for the citizen and the government. So we do all of this for the citizens, because if they don't see any difference, then it's useless work. Because, as I often say, digital transformation is important, because we need to focus on the citizen. That's the important part. So next slide. So in this vision, we have 5 great axes, which fits into the vision that we just talked about. So how can we be close to the citizen experience, the experience of the employees and the staff, because it's often forgotten, because if we don't focus on these needs, there can be problems. When I was working at the Ministry of Justice, um, we've seen the limits of these different approaches, and if we don't focus on both the citizen and the personnel at the same time. There's also a lot of improvements to be done in public administration, lots of manual tasks that are very cumbersome and that could be made more efficient in the administrative sphere. So there needs to be an improvement in performance. We also need to make the information as secure as possible. It's an extremely major issue, because even if we build all of this, if we're victim of cyber attacks, there's always cyber attacks going on in Canada. And we've lived such a situation in Quebec and in the education world. So this week it was in Terre-Neuve and Newfoundland in the health field. It's something that's very concerning, because cybersecurity is extremely important, and sometimes it's not quite up to the levels that we would wish for. So in the future, in the next years and months, we'll need to dedicate a lot more time and money to cybersecurity. And of course, there's infrastructure. I won't go much over this. I know Stefan will go a little bit over this in his presentation later, but the quality of our infrastructures is extremely important. And that's why we need to mutualize and how we can go to cloud storage, because right now we're not sitting on very solid grounds everywhere. So next slide. So we also have a bit of a framework where we talk about a lot of digital transformation. But in public administration, we don't have always the same, we don't always see things eye to eye. So when we're talking about digital transformation, we wanted to be more precise here with different concepts that perhaps many of you already know. But sometimes we think it's well known, but when we talk to different people, we're not quite sure that everybody's on the same page or want to go as far as perhaps things should be. So if we look here in the top left square, we see that a cultural change is, and all these changes need to go at the various level. So this digital transformation, before it becomes something that's technological, at first it's a cultural change, an organizational change.
that integrates digital competencies. So we need new competencies to uh, to operate this digital transformation, which is an issue throughout the whole public service. It is an issue everywhere, and it is an issue in the private sector as well. That is to be able to rely on people who have digital competencies that are able to set up and implement digital processes and to use the new technology, which is not the same digital tools that we used in the 90s or the 2000s. And the true transformations are happening at all levels and in each of the positions and functions of our organizations in a strategic way, in a continuous way. We cannot operate a digital transformation overnight. We go hard for 2 years and then it's done. No, we go through, we get on board a continuous process, and we see at all levels, as we said to our ministers, digital transformation must begin at the National Assembly in the way we write up laws and design programs, in the way we write up bylaws and regulations that can be obstacles to improving the processes and making them more digital. So in the past, the pressure was on the IT teams to do digital, but that's not what digital transformation is. It must be done at all levels of the chain. So now you see what digital transformation is not. And I don't want to go too much into the detail here, but what we did in the past was to do digital things. I'm from that generation. I saw people who were younger than me that might have not have known what it was to not have computers or tablets at the office. But I lived that, and at the beginning we were very proud. I was at the Quebec Revenue Agency. We had forms and brochures and documents. We would, I was very proud because we would digitize them in PDF format and we would put on the internet. We were all excited, but that's not what we are talking about here. We need to become digital. So it's a completely different way to think. It's a model with which we're familiar today is the La Presse with La Presse Plus that has completely revolutionized our way to access the media. While you have other types of media that are even more traditional, for example, the paper format newspaper that they managed to digitize, you can scroll on your tablet now in the morning. So when we have a digital newspaper, our experience must be different because it's not only about reading text on a paper format. So this next slide, please. Now I'm going to present the main lines of this aspect at the Treasury Board and the office. We worked quite hard on this and with our predecessors to establish a government vision that is oriented towards the future in terms of digital solutions. We have the 2019 2023 strategy. There's the cybersecurity government policy. Recently, we pu- published the AI strategy, which will be a fundamental element of the digital transformation over the next years. We also have our government data management policy. We would be believing in unicorns if we thought we would be able to operate a digital transformation without better managing the data that is in the possession of the state. We have updated the Act on Governance of Digital Resources from 1995. I won't delve into the detail. I think most of you received that training. Anyways, I have got a short slide on that. And we are in the process of working on the digital foundation, which is composed of all the systems that must be set up that can be common to all ministries and organizations And the goal is to avoid that everyone works in silos and works in double to do the same thing. So we focus on their business mission, and we want to have a set of common infrastructures so that we can have the power to offer customer service. And we are working on the priority projects initiative at the government because we realized that there are way too many projects that have been started, that are being started up. There are too many priorities, and we know that over time we have lost track of the political priorities of the government. So everyone is starting a project, asking for funding, asking for resources. We are at the crossroads, and if we're able to go forward, we need to prioritize among portfolios the projects that will be the most structuring, and we need to focus our energy on that. And it is a challenge that we are not the only ones to face. There are physical infrastructures that are linked to the same problem. The teaching institutions, roads, bridges. So as for the IT aspect of things, things are not as visible, but the status of things is just as concerning in terms of all the work that we need to do. And the capacity we have at the government is also of concern. Next slide. Our latest legislative tool to upgrade to the 21st century was focused on the role of the information, the CIO, the Chief Information Officer. We've reinforced information security, and we've created a true government network to cyber protect public administration. I've talked about data protection already. We are also digital transformation. We will ask everyone to produce their digital transformation plan, not a technological digital transformation plan, rather what that will entail for the citizen. When we approve projects, the first concern before everything else is what will be the benefits for the government, for the population, for the staff. So we can't implement any project without understanding what the benefits of that project are. And when we talk about the management of these projects, we're working hard as we speak with all the teams and CIOs, of which Stéphane is a colleague, to simplify the rules. We're very strong on the normative aspect of things, but we want to simplify rules so that the steps of solution design are shorter, so that we get into the execution mode faster with true prototypes, so that we make progress. Because as we speak, we can lose as much as 3 years in the design phase, and we don't have any time to lose. We're working very hard. Of course, we can't do things in any way. Of course, we're investing the Quebec government $4 billion per year in IT, in operation and investments. But we still have to coordinate our initiatives and structure things and organize things. But of course, we have to make an effort to simplify rules that apply so that we give everyone some leeway so that they can make progress. What we're showing here on the screen are the objectives we have. There's a sequence with the move to the digital mode on the left of the screen. If we don't use digital to simplify red tape so that citizens have access to public service, I think we are not even simplifying them. We are eliminating them. If we don't do that, all the work we do, everything I just mentioned, will be useless. And it is obvious that as we speak, the two things that we hear about constantly, the pandemic and the shortage of workforce. Workforce shortage is going to be around for 5 or 6 years. So the only way to be able to resolve things is to rely on digital technology that will be much more efficient. Let's move to the last slide. If my calculation is correct, I have 1 minute left. You've heard that in the inauguration speech of the Prime Minister, that, well, because the Prime Minister announced the creation of a new ministry, Digital and Cybersecurity Ministry, which means that the state, the government, recognizes that the digital function in a modern state is not a support activity to the other missions of the state anymore. It becomes a mission of the state in itself, in its own right. And it's a way to reach out to our citizens and to offer them services and to resolve problems related to the environment, health, and education. And the three objectives, the three priorities we have with the creation of this new ministry, you can see them on the screen, to strengthen cybersecurity, to set up a digital identity. We're working on that with many government corporations, and we don't have that yet. This is slowing us down in our evolution, digital evolution. And obviously, we want to have better communication between ministries, communication of data. So it is a huge, a mammoth endeavor. That's what they call at the Ministry of Center, but the Ministry of Health. But it is pharaonic, actually. We could say that at the state level. So now I will pass the microphone to my colleague Stéphane. Thank you very much for this very interesting presentation. I will now pass the floor to Mr. Louis, to Mr. Lehoux. Thank you, Pierre, for your presence and your engagement. You are truly inspiring a leader, and I'm happy to be working with you. Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be with you, especially at this Digital Education Day. And there's sentimental value for me here because my team is working quite hard. Worked quite hard on building this initiative with various partners. So this is a third edition of Digital Education Day. The fourth edition will take place next year. Before I talk about digital transformation, let's look into the past. 10 years ago, the first plan towards digital transformation is what we called 2.0. That was 10 years ago. In these 10 years, we've set up white boards in the schools. You remember that. We wanted to have whiteboards in all classrooms, provide PCs to all or PCs to all teachers to ensure they would be well equipped so that they could be used in the class. When this happened, were we ready? The answer is probably no, because all our classes networked, equipped with Wi-Fi. Were teachers ready for all of this? Probably not. And we had the will to do this first step. That's what happened. In 2018, we launched the Digital Action Plan, and we wanted to give a new life to the digital transformation. And what's extraordinary is to see not the equipment that is now in classrooms, is to see the initiatives, the risk taking that were done in school institutions. Digital leaders took the stage and they contributed to getting things moving forward. More and more teachers are working in cooperation on the network, sharing their initiatives. Students were now initiated to the digital thinking. They're doing programming, they're executing projects with digital tools in classrooms. They work in a context where creativity is one of the most important values. That's a sign that some action was taken. We had some positive consequences. What about COVID now? all of society did a huge leap, and teach the education network was no exception. Today, we can say that the education network does digital, but are we digital? That's the question. How can we become truly digital? I think that the vision, the direction, the engagement that was shared by Pierre contribute to setting the stage on which we can build everything. But there are probably other elements that must contribute to becoming digital. First of all, I think we need to make digital a priority. Pierre mentioned the creation of the new Ministry of Cybersecurity and Digital is a tangible proof of this will, this priority, government priority, that will have consequences at all levels. The digital transformation is also a testimony of that will from the government. That is to want to operate a digital transformation of the education network. $1.2 billion, of which a great part is dedicated to the equipment and infrastructure, to the technical support, to training and support, and to resource acquisition. But what makes this digital action plan unique is its vision. It is based on the success of people. So the digital aspect is not the goal, but rather a tool at the surface of education success. A plan that focuses on the digital tools and aspect of education success, bringing the digital solutions to a society that's in the right amidst a transformation. We have three main orientations to support the development of digital competencies, to use digital as a vector of plus value in teaching and learning practices, and creating an environment fostering the development of these skills. The digital action plan is like nitrite that you would add it in gas. It accelerates the digital transformation. Over the last few years, we defined what digital competencies were. There was an artistic blur around this that we have cleared up through our work. We also demonstrated that the potential of digital is a plus value in teaching and learning. We want to foster experimentation and support networks so that we can slowly bring about change in the culture and in our practices. I say we, well, I say we, but I mean all of us, because implementing digital is a shared responsibility. And now we need to have the courage of pursuing efforts, continuing efforts, and mobilizing resources to support the digital transformation by having a vision in our environment. Discussing with you, with several of you, we've discovered extraordinary initiatives. There are local plans, local digital action plans that have been set up and that are bringing about an extraordinary synergy between IT and pedagogical staff so that they can improve things in the network. So we are talking about vision, engagement, priorities. We also talk about vigilance, being vigilant. Pierre said it earlier, cyber attacks will be the new pandemic. We are already in that pandemic. The means used to communicate information make it so that information has a high value. As for any other citizen, data of students, of teachers, of parents must be adequately protected. We must then reinforce our infrastructure, build or focusing our digital transformation on past date infrastructure is not going to work. So we have a government policy that will frame the cybersecurity aspect of things. When we are affected by a major incident, it's not just the institution, it's the whole network that is affected. It's the ministry for its credibility, the government for its credibility. We all have a responsibility, common responsibility in making sure that we improve our infrastructure. So it's nice to have directives and support. Now we need to have the means to do that. And that is the operational cyber defense center that was created. It's a way to mutualize resources to help you, to help the network, a quality service, to help competencies in cybersecurity. Pierre said that the labor shortage exists specifically in our country, specifically in cybersecurity. So working together can only be positive. A wonderful community was created where several hundreds of members interact together to gain maturity, implement solutions, find solutions, and then implement them in terms of cybersecurity. We need to be vigilant, but we need to be bold. The government has implemented its AI implementation strategy in the network. We want to respond by integrating the policy in digital integration, and I think it is unanimously accepted. We want to put digital intelligence at the service of education success. This was adopted by my colleagues at the government. But how to do that? That's the question. We need to use quality data that will allow us to better understand through tools such as AI what happens, what is happening, and then anticipate to through AI with predictive algorithms, better interact in the future, interact upstream with students and teachers in programs we develop and public policy development. Digital intelligence tools could prevent education failure, could keep children in school longer. A colleague was saying that the tools they've set up allow them to gain time, it gives time to students and to teachers. Now, nothing is worth more than time nowadays. It's a wonderful initiative, such as uh, such initiatives are multiple in the network. We will focus on them and use them to accelerate the integration of artificial intelligence. And as you know, none of this will happen overnight. And I'm truly engaged in working with you in a collaborative mode to get this transformation to happen step by step in a pragmatic and collaborative way. If we are bold and courageous, it'll work. You know, data management is a sensitive issue and it is at the core of our concerns, including in our digital intelligence initiative. I think there is no better way to address this element because we are addressing it with confidence because the government had the courage to offer support on digital data. You know, starting to work on the data field required a lot of courage. Nowadays, thanks to Bill 95, in the management framework, government data will be better protected. We will ensure that the privacy laws are applied in a transparent way. Of course, there's the creation of the government data entering system. We want to avoid uh, double entering of data to ensure that when citizens communicate with the state or with the network, it'll be done in a simpler way and data won't be entered in double. So I'd like to salute the courage of the government to who was bold enough to address this. And obviously a bit of innovation cannot, well, never killed anyone. There are wonderful projects that are in progress as we speak, including in the modernization of ministry systems. We'll have a new infrastructure management system that will improve the quality of the management everywhere in the network. Some programs, initiatives that are innovative. Actually, there are several and many innovative initiatives. That's what is happening with digital transformation. It is well on the way with its advantages and disadvantages, with its obligations and benefits. So to implement this digital transformation, we need to have a vision and engagement. We need to make it a priority. We need to be careful. We need to be audacious, bold, courageous. I've said a lot of things, and there's another thing I need to say. I think the most important thing to reach this status of being digital, it's obvious. I think we need to work together, working with the Treasury Board, with the Ministry of Public Security, with the education system. Together, we will succeed. So we need to mobilize all of the staff, administrators and teachers working in administration and pedagogical fields must work together to get this transformation to become reality so that we become digital. But essentially, it is thanks to digital leadership, transformational leadership, and to the combination of other elements that we will be able to offer the best that this digital transformation can bring. And you know, the influence of transformational leadership is incredible. It is the base that allows to create a culture of sharing and experimentation, to create structure for experimentation, to allow for collaboration as a network. It allows to facilitate the implementation of pilot projects, take part in research projects. The goal of the here is to maintain digital competencies among students and administrator to develop management skills. It allows us well to create new digital class data models and to make decisions based on fact-based data. If this aspect interests you, I invite you to take part in the next workshop after this one. Mr. Pelletier and Ms. Rancourt's presentation that propose that we highlight the recipe for success. And together, let's move from doing digital to being digital. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lehoux. It was very interesting, very inspiring as well. We can now move to the questions period. Please know that we will also have a questions and answers section in Zoom. Even if your questions are not answered here, they will be kept and we will answer them later in the next days. Let's move to the first question.
So first question for you, Mr. Rodriguez. So should it be interesting to use digital skills to improve citizen contributions? Or perhaps we should have a governmental model or vision by using different platforms. Well, yes, that's a good idea. So when we're talking about citizen responsibility, what it will allow us to do is to access to the universe of digital services of the government in a very secure way and fluid way. So consultation, when we're talking about citizen consultation, we've already taken a first step in our consultation platform public, but in a democracy, I think it's an element that we need to put forward. So I'm not sure, perhaps we'll have some referendums in a digital platform on several topics. But if we wanted to have real value, we need to be able to be organized in a way that it will be useful to avoid fraud and encourage participation. So these are in the vision, this is in the vision. So in the short term, we're not quite there because putting all this into place is important. But after that, yes, we'll be able to put forth several projects of that nature. Thank you. Question that perhaps a lot of people are wondering in the network. We're talking about ambition, the cloud. There's also the lack of workers. What can you say to reassure the people on this issue? Yes, the issue here is, I don't think, uh, I think it's an international issue. We're not the only ones in Quebec to have this problem. And before, a Quebecer that wanted to work in a US firm or in London or in England or in France and so on, usually they would have to sell their house and convince their family to follow them. So, but now with what we've known with the pandemic, with remote work, we know there's several Quebecers that work for in California firms and they don't need to move. So that it accentuates the problem. So what can we do for this problem? So obviously there's the Treasury Council is always working with the unions to see how we can limit the gaps in with the salary in different fields, but you know that it's not only the people in the tech people that think they have a salary gap to catch up. So these are complex questions. So with the mutualization of working together, we need to remind ourselves that there's about 20, 30 people, 23,000 people that work in the technological sector. So that's a lot of people. So at the Prorata, Desjardins has about 6,500. In the Quebec government, we have about 23,000. So concretely, we think about the people we lose, but over the past years, the number of people that come and work for the government in the technological information center keeps increasing. So there's not an exodus of brain power, but yes, we lose some employees to the private sector. So I think the way in which we can attract people is to get interns and get the interest of the youth very early on. That's why we work closely with different schools and universities to get the youth at the source to interest them in government projects. And I think it's up to the Quebec government for someone that loves to work in digital technology. The real future projects, complex, attractive, and interesting, will be at the Quebec government level. So that's something we need to work on at several levels. International recruitment is not excluded as well. We need to look at that options. There's a lot of options, and that's what we're looking at. It's a complex problem. Our colleagues at the Minister of Work is also working on this issue and is collaborative with the education institutions as well. So there's fewer people coming out of school than the number of people we need in civil society. So I think we need to prioritize how we can change the way in which we work to be able to be efficient in how we manage our projects. And as Stefan said, we need to mutualize the network with cybersecurity, for example. We need to put the teams to work together in the networks that we've put there. That's hundreds of people working together. So when there's cyber attacks, people help each other. So we have a capacity that's fairly important. Thank you very much. The direction is very open and truthful. Thank you for your openness. Question for Mr. Leroux. Earlier, we were talking about the importance of the network and collaboration. So I have a question. We forget all that the network can bring to the public administration in more of a general way, because there's a lot of innovation going on, but sometimes I think we're missing occasions to get those innovations in place. Yes, but we've started in a, we were working in silos before, and now we're at an era of mutualization, especially in the worker shortage era. So it needs to be a global transformation. And I think over the last few years, we've worked on understanding all these needs and how we can improve them. And we know at the different conversations that there's a will to share this information through the network. We see great initiatives in various regions where there's a sharing of resources and skills. So there's initiatives such as one we've got this week in the Valais and Vallée des Serres. There's a lot all over the place, great initiatives. So we need to listen to this and to promote them, to use them. We need to work together. We can't work from scratch every time. We need to work together and promote what already exists. So it's always the same money and it's the same project. So we need to reduce spending and work what's already existing, even if it's not quite perfect, even if it doesn't meet the needs perfectly. Better to have an imperfect product that works than waiting for perfection and never releasing. So I think this principle is interesting to develop and to continue to promote through the minister with the synergy with, no matter the topic, we need to promote the transfer of information. So just to talk about the last element you mentioned, we need to put out something, even if it's not perfect. So perhaps it might mean taking a few more risks, because perhaps the product will not perfectly answer the need. So it's a bit of a drastic change right now in the vision. Yes, it's a bit of a change, but development all over the world is done this way. It's iterative development. We start from citizen comments, and it helps us to build a product that better answer their needs, the needs of the citizens. So I think it's the right way to work through all of this. So we're talking about an iterative approach here. Does the SAP is open to this iterative approach in a continuous way? Yes, of course, we're open to it. The digital wallet that we want to put into place, that's exactly it. So if we wait, and I'm perfectly aligned with what Stefan said, we need to abandon our fears, accept the risk, and sometimes the risk will materialize. We've lived through this with the vaccinal passport. You know your colleagues in the health field, you worked with them, the minister needed, society needed vaccine passwords, and everybody worked on this quickly, and it's working great right now. So we had a first version, and there was a bit of a problems. There were some small issues that were talked about in the media, but that were worked out very quickly. It was overall somewhat minor issues that we corrected quickly. We chose to move forward because we wanted to put out the product as quickly as possible, and it is still being improved. People don't realize this, but it's a product that is improving over time. And we show that we can be quick, even though it's not perfect. And we need to live with the risk. And the minister, we show these risks to the minister and he approves them. But we can't work like as we did before and to take 5 years just to make 100%, just to be 100% sure that there won't be any issues at all. We can't do this anymore. Yes. Well, that's all the time we had today. So thank you to everyone that was here. Thank you so much. It was very interesting. And thank you to the whole team that you don't see behind the screen that allows us to do this. And thank you to everyone. I invite you to have a great digital day. Thank you for the invitation. Bye, everyone. Bye.